First Story, by John Smith. I was on my way home one night after a long day at work in New York City. The subway was my usual mode of transportation, and it had become almost second nature to me. But that night was different. I found myself on a train heading through a part of the city I rarely ventured into, an area known for its dark alleys and eerie atmosphere. The train was nearly empty, and the flickering overhead lights did little to dispel the shadows that seemed to grow larger and darker as we continued deeper into the district. The train screeched to a halt, and the lights dimmed momentarily before flickering back to life. I exchanged nervous glances with the few other passengers on board. Just as I was starting to relax, a man entered the car from the far end. He was tall and thin, with disheveled hair and a wild look in his eyes. He wore tattered clothes that seemed to blend in with the overall dilapidated appearance of the district. He walked with a strange, lurching gait, and something about his demeanor set my heart racing. He made his way down the aisle, and his eyes locked onto mine. I quickly averted my gaze, hoping to avoid any interaction with this unsettling stranger. But as he passed me, he whispered something under his breath. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone of his voice sent a shiver down my spine. I pretended not to hear him and kept my eyes fixed on my phone. The minutes crawled by, and I anxiously awaited my stop, praying it would come soon. The man had taken a seat a few rows behind me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching me. As we neared my stop, I gathered my belongings and prepared to exit the train. But just as the doors began to open, the man stood up and started moving in my direction. Panic surged through me, and I bolted from the train, not daring to look back. I found myself in the dimly lit station, my heart pounding in my chest. The platform was deserted, and I could still feel the man's presence behind me. I started to walk briskly, my footsteps echoing eerily in the empty space. But as I turned a corner, I realized I was not alone. A group of 3 men emerged from the shadows, blocking my path. They wore hooded sweatshirts that concealed their faces, and my mind raced with thoughts of what they might want from me. I tried to back away, but the subway entrance was now blocked by the strange man who had followed me. I was trapped, surrounded by a group of ominous figures in a desolate subway station. Fear gripped me, and I knew I had to act fast. Without hesitation, I sprinted down the platform and leaped onto the tracks. I could hear shouts and curses behind me as I scrambled to my feet and ran for my life. I emerged from the station, breathless and disheveled, and didn't stop until I reached a well-lit street. I hailed a taxi and didn't look back as I watched the cityscape disappear in the rearview mirror. To this day, I have no idea what those men wanted or what the strange man had whispered to me on the train. All I know is that I had narrowly escaped a terrifying ordeal in that dark and terrifying district of the city. Second Story, by Emily Davis. It was a chilly night in Budapest, and I had decided to take a late-night stroll through the historic district of the city. The cobblestone streets were eerily empty, and the old buildings loomed overhead, casting long, ominous shadows. As I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I glanced over my shoulder and saw a man several paces behind me. He was tall and wore a long, dark coat that billowed in the wind. I quickened my pace, hoping to put some distance between us. But no matter how fast I walked, the man remained a constant presence behind me. I felt a growing sense of unease and decided to take a series of turns, hoping to lose him in the labyrinthine streets of the district. But he persisted, following me around every corner. My heart raced as I realized I was being followed, and fear gnawed at me. I couldn't go home. I couldn't let this stranger know where I lived. So, I made my way toward a busy square in the hopes of finding help. As I entered the square, I spotted a group of police officers patrolling the area. Relief washed over me, and I hurried toward them, explaining my situation. They immediately sprang into action, surrounding the man who had been following me. The man protested his innocence, claiming he was merely taking a late-night stroll like me. But his excuses fell on deaf ears, and the police decided to search him. What they found sent chills down my spine. Hidden in his coat pockets were several items that no ordinary person would carry on a late-night walk: a length of rope, a small knife, and a mask. The officers arrested the man, and I watched as they led him away in handcuffs. I couldn't help but wonder what his intentions had been. What had he planned to do if he had caught up to me? I shuddered at the thought, and thanked the police for their swift action. They assured me that I was safe now, but the memory of that chilling encounter in the dark, historic district of Budapest would haunt me for years to come. Third story, by Sarah Johnson. It was a moonless night in Los Angeles, and I found myself driving through a part of the city I had never been to before. My GPS had taken me on an unfamiliar route, and I soon realized I was in a rough neighborhood. The streets were lined with boarded-up buildings, and the atmosphere was tense and unsettling. I had just stopped at a red light when I noticed a group of people huddled on the corner of the street. They were engaged in an intense argument, their voices raised in anger. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but their body language was aggressive. As I waited for the light to change, a sudden commotion caught my attention. One of the men in the group pulled out a gun and fired a single shot into the air. The sound was deafening, and panic swept through the small crowd. People scattered in all directions, seeking cover. I sat frozen in my car, unable to tear my eyes away from the unfolding scene. The man with the gun turned and started walking in my direction, his face obscured by a hoodie. My heart pounded as I realized he was heading straight for my car. In a desperate attempt to escape, I slammed my foot on the gas pedal and sped through the intersection, narrowly avoiding a collision with another vehicle. I glanced in my rearview mirror and saw the armed man chasing after me, but I didn't dare slow down. I took a series of random turns, hoping to lose him in the maze of streets. The adrenaline coursing through my veins fueled my erratic driving, and I didn't stop until I reached a well-lit gas station several blocks away. I jumped out of my car and rushed inside, telling the attendants about what I had witnessed. They called the police, and I provided a statement, describing the man with the gun and the chaotic scene I had stumbled upon. The officers assured me they would investigate the incident, but I couldn't help but feel a lingering sense of dread. That night, I had unwittingly driven through a dark and terrifying district of Los Angeles and found myself a witness to a shocking crime. The memory of that night haunted me, serving as a stark reminder of the dangers that lurked in the shadows of the city. Fourth story, by Thompson. I had always enjoyed taking long walks in the park near my apartment, especially at night when the world seemed to quiet down. But one fateful night in Boston, my peaceful stroll took a chilling turn that I would never forget. The park was bathed in darkness, illuminated only by the soft glow of the moon and the occasional street light. I walked along the winding path, my footsteps echoing in the silence. As I turned a corner, I stumbled upon a scene that sent shivers down my spine. A group of people had gathered in a clearing, their figures obscured by hooded cloaks. They stood in a circle around the bonfire, and the flickering flames cast eerie, dancing shadows on the ground. Chanting in a language I couldn't understand, they held their hands aloft, their voices rising in an unsettling harmony. I watched in stunned silence as they continued their mysterious ritual. Symbols and sigils were drawn in the dirt, and the air seemed to grow colder with each passing moment. Fear gripped me, and I debated whether to stay and observe or to make a hasty retreat. Just as I was about to slip away, one of the hooded figures turned in my direction. Our eyes locked, and a shiver ran down my spine. It was clear they had noticed my presence. Panic surged through me, and I turned to leave, but my foot caught on a tree root, and I stumbled, making a noise that echoed through the silent park. The hooded figures reacted instantly, their heads snapping in my direction. With a sinking feeling in my chest, I realized they were now coming toward me. My heart raced as I sprinted away, branches and leaves crunching beneath my feet. I dared not look back, but I could hear their footsteps behind me, growing louder with each passing second. My lungs burned as I pushed myself to run faster, my mind racing with thoughts of what they might do if they caught me. I finally burst out of the park and into the well-lit streets of the city. I didn't stop until I reached the safety of my apartment. I locked the door behind me and peered out the window, but there was no sign of the hooded figures. To this day, I have no idea what I stumbled upon in that dark corner of the park, but the memory of their chilling ritual still haunts me. I can't help but wonder what would have happened if I hadn't escaped, and I'm grateful that I'll never find out. Fifth Story, by Maria Rodriguez. I had always been drawn to the eerie beauty of abandoned places, and Detroit's industrial district offered plenty of opportunities for exploration. One night, armed with a flashlight and my curiosity, I decided to visit an old warehouse I had heard whispers about. The warehouse loomed before me, its windows shattered and graffiti-covered walls standing as a testament to years of neglect. The streets around it were deserted, and I felt a chill in the air as I approached the entrance. Inside, the darkness was oppressive, broken only by the narrow beam of my flashlight. The air was thick with dust and the musty scent of decay. As I ventured deeper into the cavernous space, I heard faint whispers and the echo of footsteps in the distance. My heart began to race as I realized I was not alone. I turned off my flashlight and listened carefully, trying to pinpoint the source of the sounds. The whispers grew louder, and I could make out the hushed voices of several people. I cautiously made my way toward the voices, my senses on high alert. I rounded a corner and came face to face with a group of squatters huddled around a makeshift campfire. Their eyes met mine, and the tension in the air was palpable. They were a ragtag group, dressed in tattered clothes and wearing expressions that ranged from curiosity to hostility. They made it clear that I was not welcome in their domain, and I quickly realized I had trespassed into territory they were fiercely protective of. One of the men stepped forward, his voice low and threatening. He warned me to leave and never return, and the others nodded in agreement. I stammered an apology and turned to leave, my heart pounding in my chest. But as I made my way back through the darkened warehouse, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. I quickened my pace, my footsteps echoing loudly in the empty space. The whispers grew louder, and I knew they were coming after me. I burst out of the warehouse and into the night, my heart in my throat. I didn't stop running until I reached the safety of my car. I peeled out of the industrial district, grateful to have escaped the clutches of those sinister squatters. That night, I learned the hard way that some places are best left abandoned, and that the shadows of the city can hide dangers far more real and menacing than any ghost or monster. Thank you for watching whole video. Check this video you see on the screen, it's one of my favorite. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and smash that like, to support my free and daily content for you. If you enjoyed this video, drop a comment and tell me what story got you chills.